Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the virtual school orientation. This is our third meeting. This week, you only needed to attend one. All of these meetings are being recorded and will be placed on the Department of Education website in a few days. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce your moderator and host today, Gloria Burdett. Gloria.
Hi, thank you, Mark, and welcome. We are really excited to have such a nice group here today, and we just want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a virtual learner for the West Virginia Virtual School Program. So if you are taking West Virginia Virtual School courses, you have come to the right place to learn all about it, and hopefully we can answer all your questions and kind of show you how to get around the class and some of the things that you really need to know. Let's talk a little bit about what it means to be a virtual student and to be successful, because it's a little different than a brick and mortar classroom. Some of the things that you need is you need reliable internet. As a virtual student, you're going to have to use the internet to access your classes and do things like that. And so given the excuse of, oh, I don't have any internet, it's not going to work for virtual classes. If you've signed up for them, you know that it's needed, and you might have to go to the public library, or a lot of the schools have hotspots on in their parking lots. You can go to some of the fast food restaurants. You can go to grandma's house, a friend's house, any place that has the internet. These courses should be available pretty much 24/7. Every now and then there's a little maintenance period that'll happen, and they usually do that in the middle of the night when not so many people are up and trying to do their schoolwork. So it's you do need that internet service. You need good time management skills. If you don't hear anything else today, make sure you hear the part that says, don't wait until the last minute to turn in all your schoolwork, because procrastination is not a good thing in the virtual world. And it's easy to do because you don't have a teacher standing there saying, Gloria, your assignment's due tomorrow. Make sure you get it done tonight. You have to have that initiative and that self-motivation to be able to turn that assignment in, get that assignment done, turn it in so that your teacher can grade it. You don't want to wait until the last minute, or you're going to be up 24/7 for that last week and you're going to be tired. So keep working at a steady pace starting next week, because school starts September 7th, right? The 8th, 7th or the 8th, next Tuesday. So make sure that you get started then. Some of the courses are opening now, and that's for orientation purposes, so that you can get in, start looking around, go through the orientation unit that's built into your classes, and then by next Tuesday, you'll be all set and ready to do your schoolwork. Our teachers will start responding to orientations, but they're really not going to start grading content and things like that until next Tuesday, since we have an executive order that says school starts next Tuesday. So they are abiding by that law. As a student in the West Virginia Virtual School, you will want to note that you're eligible to work with or attend a lot of the events that are at your school and be a part of the school, because you are actually a public school student to some extent. If you may be attending a private school and virtual school, so you might have some kind of blended approach going on, but for the most part, everybody attending today is probably getting their instruction via virtual school, but you can still work with the local school to find out what you're eligible to do, what's available, some of the activities that are available in your school. One of the first things we want you to know is the difference between two key words in the West Virginia Virtual School Program. You will hear about a teacher. You have an online teacher that is provided by the West Virginia Virtual School to grade your assignments, give you feedback on those assignments. They have the content and they want to make sure that you learn, and they're going to focus on how you're doing in the class, and if you need them, and giving you all that information that you know you need to know about math and science and your elective classes. So they're the person you'll turn to for that. If your assignment's not graded, you need to email them and ask them why is my assignment not graded? Can you see it? Because, you know, sometimes there are computer glitches. So that make sure that you stay in constant contact with that online teacher, because just like in the public school system and the face-to-face classroom, you need to build that relationship with that online teacher. Then there's another important person, and that's the facilitator. And the facilitator is somebody that is provided by your school. And they're going to help you with issues. Say they give you a device at your school, and maybe it's some kind of a tablet or a computer, and it stops working. Well, your online teacher can't do anything about that, but you can contact that person there locally at your school and say, hey, my device is messed up. And they can say, okay, why don't you bring it in? We'll have the tech people look at it. And they can meet up for those kinds of reasons. They also will be the one that will proctor any exams that need proctored, and they'll make that arrangement with you on how they choose to do it, because it's different from place to place, school to school, county to county. Everybody has a different way to proctor exams, but they do have a password on them. And the thing is the facilitator is not going to give you the password, and the facilitator is, or the online teacher is not going to give you the password, because we want to make sure that everybody knows that you're ready for that exam. For this school year, most of those exams will be the final exam in the class, and that's usually at the very end of the class. And we break all of our classes into a half credit for most of them. Some of the smaller ones that are in music, art, PE in the elementary and the middle school, that's not broken into two parts, but your English, science, social studies, those kinds of things will be broken into two different parts. So one of the big things you need to know is about Office 365. Everybody that is in this program has a free Office 365 account, so that you have Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. You have an email account through that, and you'll use the program called Outlook to access your email, because every student has an @stu.k12.wv.us email address. When you get that Weavis number, or as my kids used to call it, my lunch number, then you have an Office 365 account. And you will log into that, and then you'll be able to use those programs to submit your assignments. But you also want to get in the habit of checking your email every day, even multiple times a day, because your teachers are going to communicate with you via email a lot of the time. So make sure you can download an app on your phone if you have a phone and you want your email on there, or you can log into your device and get it that way. How do you get to it? That's a good question. It's simple. You go to office.com. So I'm going to take that off the screen, and I'm just going to show you when you type office.com, it comes up. And see, I'm logged right into mine because I was already logged into it. So let me get out of that. But it would office.com. That's where you go. Once you're in office.com and you click that Outlook icon, it'll take you to your email. Now you might be saying, well, how do I know what my password is? And what's my email address? Well, that information is something that you have to get from the school, because most of the time you have to sign a little form that's called an acceptable use policy that says that I will use that appropriately for my schoolwork. And your school will make you sign that. And then they will give you your email address and your password so that you can access your classes. If they forget to tell you that where to go, just remember it's office.com, and you'll put your email address in and you'll put your password, and it should go right in there. If you have any problems, you can contact your facilitator and your school, and they will help you with that, because sometimes those computer generated passwords are kind of difficult to figure out. I know they are for me, because I'll think it's an L, but it's really a capital I, or I'll think it's a 0, but it's really a capital O. So they'll help you figure out those kinds of things. So let's see what else was I want to show you how you're going to access your classes. I'm going to log out so that I start from the very beginning like you do. Let me just pull it up here. And where you're going to go, and you're going to get an email that tells you, log in here, and it's going to take you to a screen that looks like this. Or you can actually type in your browser right here the address, and it is, I'll pull it over here so you can see it. In case somebody wants to take a picture of their phone, that's what I do. It'll say wvlearns.k12.wv.us. And when you go in there, and didn't sound right, did it? When you go in there into the portal, you'll get here, you'll type in that same email address and password that you used at office.com. It's all linked together. That way students only have to remember one password and one email address. When you get here, the classes that you're currently enrolled in will be right here. Now, there are lots of people registering right now. So if all of your classes don't populate right away, that means we have a team of 50 to 100 people that are processing all those registrations. So we're really focusing on math and English. So those may start appearing first, but we do also have a team that's working, a smaller team of just 1 or 2 people that's working on the music classes and the PE classes and things like that. But we have bigger teams of people processing the math and the English, as well as science and social studies. So your courses will start appearing, and they'll look right here, and you'll just click on them. You'll see that they all say that they end on July 2nd. Your school will actually decide on your end date. We're keeping it open that long, but your school might just say you have to be done by May 25th or June 8th. Most schools will keep that time frame on whatever their brick and mortar school schedule is. So you'll want to make sure you ask your school exactly when do I need to finish my classes. So if it's first semester, you may have to finish those either right before Christmas or more likely sometime in January this school year, since everybody's not starting until September. But ask your school for that calendar so you'll know exactly when to keep track. Once you're in here, you can click on your class, or you can access it up here with the little waffle. You'll be able to push that little button and look for your classes that way. If you've taken West Virginia virtual school classes before, make sure that you're on the 2020-21 school year, right here. You can scroll down, and you'll also see that there's an announcement telling you that classes start on September 8th. You'll also see some other announcements that don't pertain to students that are in the K-12. Those are for your teachers and other adults in the school system who are taking classes. And those are referred to as professional development or e-learning for educator classes. So you make sure that you pay attention to the ones that say for grades K through 12, because that's us in our program. So I'm going to take you into a class so everybody can see how to maneuver in the class. And we have a training class, and I'm going to take you to that particular training class. When you log in, this is what it looks like. You should see your teacher information, and some of that is still populating. So if your teacher information is not there yet, it's still populating. Just for the record, this is not my picture. I was just demonstrating this and training. So this is not my picture. It was just the closest picture I had when I was demonstrating. Right through here, there's news items. And this is how the teacher will make an announcement to the class. So if the teacher wants to say to the whole entire class that something is going on and something is happening, then they will go here and they'll make an announcement. So make sure you read anything. It's similar to like the brick and mortar school where the teacher walks in on the very first day. The teacher might say, hey, we're going to have fun in this class, and we're going to start by coming on Friday night to open house, and make those kinds of announcements. So watch for those right there. The way that you maneuver through the class is right up here. This is your navigation bar, and we're going to click the word content and go straight to the content. This is where you will begin working on your class, and everything over to the side is a module to be worked on. You'll start with an orientation, and the great thing about that is we're going over a lot of that today. But one of the very first things you're going to do is learn about navigating the course, which we're going to go over today. And then you're going to meet your teacher, because that will start populating as the teachers start becoming more active in the classes. And then you're going to introduce yourself to the teacher. So if the teacher isn't quite there yet, just go ahead and introduce you to the teacher, and you can keep coming back to it to read it, because it will always be there. But you'll do this by going to your office.com, and you can get your, you can go to Microsoft Word, or you can do a PowerPoint, you can do a video. There's all different kinds of ways that you can use to upload to show you, to introduce yourself to your teacher. Okay, then we would move, and I'm going to go to Module 5 here. And these are out of order just because we're playing in this class. The first thing you often will see will be a pretest. And this is going to vary from class to class depending on what you could call it a textbook, but it's not a written textbook. It's where we lease the content from, or where we've written it, or whatever the case may be. It'll be designed different. Just the same way as when you go from your third grade art class to your third grade music class and then to your English class. Those all look different because you have different teachers for all of those classes. So right here, you might start with a pretest. Some people get a little nervous about that, and they think that that's really hurting their grade, but it's not. The purpose for the pretest is to allow the teacher to see just exactly where you stand in before you even start, because you may know all about, this is about imagination, and you may know all about imagination, and there may be some things in this unit that your teacher may decide that she or he does not want you to do because you scored so high on the pretest. But if you get a 0 on the pretest, that's okay, because we really don't expect you, or your teacher doesn't expect you to know about imagination before you get there. So it's just a way for the teacher to know just exactly where you stand, because then they can test you at the end, and they can make sure that you learned everything that they wanted you to learn, or if there's something that they need to reteach, just like they do in a brick and mortar classroom. Once you go to an assignment, you can see this is an assignment because it has this little button there that says External Learning Tool. And I'm going to show you this assignment. It's the first lesson, is what it really is. And this is an elementary class, so it's a little bit different. And there are 12 pages to this lesson. So you'll want to make sure that you look for all 12 pages, because it's going to teach you all 12 pages. At the elementary level, there's this little box here that says Speech Tool. See, I just turned it off, and when I turn it back on, it gives me the option to start playing. So you won't be able to hear this read when I start playing, but you can see where this yellow is. That's what it's reading out loud to me. And I'm going to turn that off. But it will read it at these elementary ages. It's all built in there. There are things to play. There are text versions, little videos to watch. These are little games where you can do different things, just to try to help you to learn, because that is the object of all this. If you're ready to go on to the next lesson, you've gone through all 12, then you can just click this button here, and it takes you to the next, which in this case is an assignment. And it's going to look different to you than it does to me, because I'm not a student in the class. But your actual assignment and all the details about uploading to the Dropbox will be right here. And if you have any questions about this assignment, you would ask your online teacher. Just whip out your email with your Outlook, and you would email the online teacher. But you would want to just continue through, going down the table of contents over here on the left. And once you hit the bottom, then you're finished with the class, and you might be ready for another one. You'll want to let your facilitator know. The way that you can keep track of where you were, because I can't always remember, what did I last do? See these little check marks over here? That means you've been there, you've looked at it, and you've been doing that and been working on that. If we had not been to this part, this would be a dot. So this is kind of like your to-do list. Oh, we went through the module 3 pretest, check mark. Oh, we accessed the quiz, check mark. So this would be a little dot, and it turns into a check mark when you perform that task or access that task. The next button I want to show you are the assignments. You saw that the quizzes and the Dropbox assignments and discussion, everything, you really just need to work down the table of contents. But maybe in your mind, you might be thinking, oh, wait, I just need to do that Unit 4 exam. Where is it? Easy way to find it is just go to your quizzes, and all your quizzes are listed here. So you could easily go and take your Unit 4 exam when you found it. And the same way with a Dropbox assignment, if you just want to go there, you know it's 3.02 and you just want to upload something, then you could just go straight there and not have to work through the table of contents to do that. The next thing you want to know is about grades. Now, mine looks different than a student's would, but if a student pushes this grades, it's going to come up and it's going to list all of their grades and some feedback that the teacher has given on the overall assignment. But if you want to know about individual quizzes and some questions, you'll have to go back over here to your quiz. And each of the quizzes, oh, I'm already in it. Your options would be when you click a little button beside it, you have a couple of options to look at your quizzes, review the submission, see reports or something. And you would click that and you would like review the submission, and there'll be feedback on individual questions a lot of times. And if you don't understand why you missed something and you don't see the feedback, make sure you email your online teacher because they want to make sure you see the feedback too. Every now and then, of course, there's a computer glitch that might keep that from showing, and they need to know how to fix that. The other neat thing about the class is you can see who's in your class from your school. There might be kids from all over West Virginia in your school, but you're only going to see the ones that are attending from your school. So you would click My Tools and Class List, and you can see everybody from school name number 2. And you can also see the role of that person right here. When you do that, you will know that facilitator, you're going to look for a facilitator role. You can see the teacher, that way you know who the teacher is and the role for the teacher, and an easy way to access them and get their email. So there's 3 different ways you can usually learn where the teacher's email is: on the very front page, in their introduction, and in this class list where you see your teacher and your facilitator and the other students. So that's the real big part of it. It's the time that it takes to do your assignments is going to vary from person to person. It's work at your own pace for the most part. However, your first assignment is going to be to do a pacing guide. So when you do a pacing guide, you're going to make like a to-do list for the semester. You're going to look at your work and you're going to say, oh, I need to do assignments 1, 2, and 3 on this week and 4, 5, and 6 this week. And it helps you stay on task. And a lot of the classes will build in a tool. For example, this one does in the content. And when you go to the welcome, there's something called course information. And when you go in there, you'll see an option, pace charts. So you want to look for something that says pace charts, pacing guide, schedule, something like that, and it will be right there. And then you'll actually see if you want, it'll ask you some questions, sometimes the start date and the end date, so it personalizes it very much. That'll do that more in the high school classes. In case we have some high schoolers or middle schoolers on here, let me show you a high school class. Go to this one. So this is a high school English class. You can see it looks similar to the elementary one. It has usually the same toolbar. The toolbar will be different in just a few classes, but for the most part, it's this. And down through here, you can see the extra note is for student athletes. So if you are a student athlete in taking a high school credit course, then that is English, science, social studies, math, or world language, and you want to play college sports for the division, I think it's 1 and 2, the 2 higher divisions for those sporting events, NCAA is something that you have to meet their eligibility requirements. And NCAA has a lot of stipulations on virtual classes, and one of those is that you have to prove that you had contact with your teacher if you're audited when it comes time to go to college. So what we ask you to do is you start making arrangements with your online teacher just for those classes, and this is for playing sports. And if you're in the 8th grade and you're taking like Spanish 1 in 8th grade or an Algebra 1, this still applies to you because you are looking for a high school credit. And you'll have to make arrangements with your online teacher to meet them probably once a month to do Teams calls, kind of like we're doing now, only it would be an interactive one. We had to do this as a live event because there's so many people attending, but when you have just a smaller crowd, it's part of the Microsoft program where you have the Office 365, office.com, and you can meet your teacher via Teams and have little discussions about your schoolwork and check in, and then you keep a log, and you'll write on that log, and you'll probably want to keep it in your OneDrive, in your Office 365 account, so it's always there. And then what you will do is keep a list of every time you communicate with your teacher, whether it is via email or Teams or whatever, and you kind of make a little note about that communication. So if you happen to get audited by NCAA, this will be submitted on file, and you'll be able to say, hey, yes, I took this class and it's all legitimate and I had lots of contact with the teacher. So if you have any questions about NCAA eligibility and what that means, you can always use your browser and do a search for NCAA eligibility requirements, because I know when my son was a freshman, I didn't really know what all that meant. But as he was a senior, I knew what that meant. So if you're just entering those grades and you are an athlete, you might want to start looking into those requirements now. But that's why we require that. We require you to meet with the teacher. But it doesn't apply to your health PE class, your CTE courses, or anything like that. It's only English, science, math, social studies, and world languages like Spanish, French, American Sign Language, those kinds of things. But you would maneuver through the class the exact same way by going to the content, and the assignments are over here on the left, and working through the module again. And remember, see, like this one, there are 6 pages. Make sure you go through all 6 pages and then go on to the next assignment. Well, one of the things I do want to mention if you're doing an elementary class is we do require you to meet with the online teacher once a week. That might be as a group activity that the teacher schedules, or it might be individual talk that the teacher schedules, but we want you to be able to have that communication with your teacher once a week. That doesn't mean that it is Wednesday at 3 o'clock or Wednesday at 8 o'clock every morning. Your online teacher is going to work with you on what works best for your family, and they're going to make sure that they can speak with you at good times. They may have a couple of different sessions during the week if they're doing group work, but just work very closely with that online teacher to make those Teams visits work out the best for both of you and accommodate everybody's schedule. But they're very important to the student learning. They are able to explain a lot, and if the student is having trouble maybe learning fractions, it's a great time for them to work on fractions, because they can pull a whiteboard up on the screen and they can start working those problems. And sometimes if they notice as they're grading your work through the week that maybe you need a little a little help with something because you misunderstand, they might even ask you to do a special session just so that they can make sure that you're getting the content, because that's their job, is to make sure that you're learning. And so they're going to be doing everything they can, because they really, teachers just love to see you learn, and they really want to work with you to make sure that you have mastered the content and you're ready for that next grade level. So I think I've covered everything that I intended to cover, but maybe some of you have questions. We did have some questions about IEPs and before we started, so let me just say that our online teacher works with your facilitator to do IEP modifications. So that is something that will be worked out between the online teacher and the facilitator at your school, and they'll work together to make sure. And sometimes there's another teacher at your school that's assigned to work with IEPs, and they'll work with you too. So you get lots of support on that IEP, and we do everything we can to make sure everything works just for you.
Okay, Gloria, this is Mark. I'm going to try to encapsulate some of these questions into big chunks.
Okay.
Question number 1, can you tell us the difference between virtual school and remote learning?
Oh, that's a hard question. Remote learning is something that the governor calls for in the school systems. And at that time, the schools would, I guess, shut down, and I'm not the expert on remote learning, but this is my understanding of it, is that the schools, we would do something like we did in March, and the children would go home, and the schools would have a plan as to how they are going to provide that instruction to the students from a remote location. The virtual school program is something that is happening virtually. We know it's happening. It's provided by, you've chosen the virtual option. It is planned. It's already developed. We're not sending home like the paper copies and different things like that. Students log in, they start working on their work. It's just doing it virtually with a teacher, and it's all online. It's not remote, using remote tools like the teachers might have done in March.
Thank you. Another question, a group of questions relates to the teachers. Let's talk about the teacher for a few moments. Can you guarantee that the teacher will be from West Virginia? Will they be from my community? And how often will I actually talk with the teacher?
In the West Virginia Virtual School Program, we make sure that every teacher that is in the program has taught in a West Virginia virtual school. That's not a law, but that's one that we actually do in the West Virginia Virtual School Program. So many of the teachers that are teaching right now in the program are in the brick and mortar school during the day, and then they're teaching with you and working with you in the evenings and weekends. The teacher may not be from your community, or they may be from your community, because we have teachers from all over West Virginia. But it's just very difficult to say, okay, this teacher's only taking kids from this area, because there's just so many registrations coming in. Now, some of the teachers that we have aren't teaching in the public school. Some of them are retired. We have several that were maybe substitutes in the past, and the schools won't be using as many substitutes this year. So they're coming here and working for us, and it's their retirement job kind of, and they've been doing that for a long time. We also have some teachers that have left the classroom because they are working on their education, and they're taking an educational leave, and they're attending a college to get either a higher level master's degree or a higher level doctorate degree. And those individuals still, they're from West Virginia, and they've taught in the West Virginia school system, but they're taking time off to pursue their education. So they are West Virginia teachers. State code says they have to be certified in the state of West Virginia to teach in any virtual program, but we take a step farther and make sure that they have taught in a West Virginia school. I do have some teachers that are certified teachers that actually teach in one of the Catholic schools, but they are a West Virginia certified teacher. It's not a public school, it's a private school system, but they're teaching in this program too. I have a few of those, not many, but a few. But the biggest part of them, I would say, I don't even know what percentage to say, but a big part of them are either they're the retired or they are the ones that are actually in the school during the day. And a lot of them wanted to do this because the students that are coming into their virtual classes are students that they would have had if they had chosen to go participate in the brick and mortar classroom this year. That's happened for several kids we've noticed.
And how often will a student have face-to-face or on-camera communication with their teacher?
At the elementary level, it's that once a week, the team meetings, they will do it at least once a week. Sometimes it might be more. It could vary from student to student, from teacher to teacher. But once a week, we do need you to log in with the online teacher at your scheduled time. Middle school, there's really not a requirement. If you need some help, they've all been trained on how to use Teams, and we'll continue to do more training so they'll feel more comfortable with it, so that if you do need some help, they will do that via Teams. And those students that participate in sports will have to meet with theirs, and it's usually something like monthly.
Gloria, I'm going to attempt the next question or two, and you give me the thumbs up if I get this right. So
Okay.
when it comes to email addresses and passwords, those are generated by your local school. So if you need a password changed or if you've lost a password, please contact your local school. If the school has issued you a device, an iPad, a Chromebook, or a Surface tablet, and that device is having technical problems, contact your local school for that. If it's your own device, then you're going to need a retail person to help you with the technical support there. When it comes to seeing your classes, we are still in the process of keying those in. There will be no penalty if you do not see your class on September 8th and you are still waiting for the class. We will just get you as soon as we can. We are keying in them as fast as possible. Rhonda and Karen, do we have any other questions that you can group together?
Gloria, could you talk about the half credits again and explain what that means?
Okay. See, it's easier to explain with a high school class. Right here, you can see this is English 10 Part 1. So there's an English 10 Part 2. In the high school that I attended several years ago, it was a semester was September to January, and then second semester was January to the 1st of June. That's not necessarily the case anymore. Different schools have different, not every school has the same schedule that you do. Some are on what you call a block, which means you probably have 4 classes between now and Christmas break or the first part of January, and you have to finish English 10 Part 1 and English 10 Part 2, and then you get a full credit of the class. So that's what we mean by this. You need a full credit of English 10 to graduate and get a high school diploma. So we break it down just for scheduling purposes, because it could be there's a lot of kids that are taking, or students that are taking virtual classes right now because of the pandemic that we're in. But if there happens to be a vaccination between now and second semester, many of you might decide that you want to go back in the brick and mortar school if your county and school system will allow that at the semester break. So therefore, you don't need the whole class right now. You only need to take Part 1 because you're going to get your half credit online. Then that other half credit of English that you need for your high school diploma, you'll just go straight into the brick and mortar school and you'll take it there. Or it could be that you have students move here all the time. So somebody may move here that's on a type of a schedule that is a 7-period day, but they moved at the semester and they need Part 2, but maybe your school only taught the whole English 10 class during the first part before Christmas. So somebody that moves here might just need to take Part 2. Or we do have children that develop illnesses and things like that, that maybe they have to go on a homebound service. And so they took the first part, or maybe they need to just take the first part and they plan to return to school as soon as they're better and they hope to return in the spring. So that's why we divided into 2 different classes, but just know if it says part 1 that you need to finish that second part, but really that's with all of your core classes, you're going to have that it needs part 1, part 2. The ones that don't, where I was talking about, like at the middle school level, in most middle schools, what they do, and yours may be different because everybody can decide, they have the rights to decide how they're going to do that. But in the middle schools, oftentimes they do like a 9-week rotation that involves, like my kids had art for 9 weeks, and then they rotated and went to music for 9 weeks, and then they rotated and they went to something else for 9 weeks. So if that's the case in those middle school classes, then you don't necessarily need part 1 and part 2. So your music class, and like in the middle school and the elementary schools, more likely to be, oh, this is the part that we did for music this year. This is our music class, and it's not divided. I know it's confusing, but I just wanted to make my big point is don't think that you have all year just to do English 10 part 1, because it's only the first half of the credit that you need to graduate.
Gloria, I know you've already talked about this a little bit, but for kindergarten students that have never been in the schools, they still need to go to their home school to get their username and password, correct?
Yes, they do. Because they still probably did some kind of registration process. A lot of counties may have had you come in, fill out a form, or they've done something online or emailed those to the parents or something like that. But yes, that comes because we don't activate those here. They activate them at the county.
Right. There have been a lot of questions on how do I register? How do I sign up for the classes? That's all taken care of through the county.
Yes. All the registration, everything, the county is still responsible for doing all that. And then what we're just doing is helping the county provide the classes and the teachers to make sure that you get the education that you deserve, you need, you want.
Gloria, can you talk for a minute about starting class early if it's available? What if I finish the work early? What if I want to work 12 hours a day and not miss out? Can you talk about that?
Well, on my end, that's okay. And we've had students do that because they know, I'll give you an example. I had a student last year, and this student had a recording contract in Nashville. So the student would do all the work, and like what you were talking about, 12 hours, because they would work really hard this week and finish up a big bunch of stuff because they knew next week they would not be able to spend any time in their class because they had to be in the recording studio all week. So with us and the way we feel about it, it's very flexible. We want you to do the work. You need to be at certain progress points, and your school will identify those progress points. So if you're progressing in the class, just keep going. I have never heard anybody, any school ever complain because a student was working too fast. So as long as your school doesn't have a problem with you working quickly, I don't have a problem either. Our teachers don't either. They'll keep up with you.
Gloria, what if the county schools are starting September 14th? Can they still start the virtual on the 8th?
Nobody has asked that question before, but so my best answer is talk to your county and see, because they may be starting everything on the 14th. I assume that has to do with the red and things like that. I'm not sure. On the governor's map, I'm not very good with that map, but whatever the case may be, if they're not starting till the 14th, just ask your school what day they expect you to start your virtual program, because they're the ones that start. We can't start until the day the governor said we could, but your school will make any variations on that. They would be responsible for those questions. Any more questions?
There is one other question, Gloria. Could you go over one more time how the student and parent can locate the facilitator in the course?
Sure. If you go to your class, look at the My Tools button, and you click it, and there's something called a class list. And you can kind of think, I'll equate that to like my granddaughter's going to kindergarten. So yesterday they went to the school and they saw the class list posted on the window with all the other people looking at the window to see where their child was. So at socially distanced 6 feet with mask. So you click the class list. And here you're going to see the role of the people in the class. So you would see the teacher and you would see the facilitator right there in the class. And when it says facilitator K-12, that should be the person at your school. Another way to notice for sure is see the email accounts. This one says at k12.wv.us. That's an adult account. The ones that are the student accounts are a staff account. The at K12 is a staff account. The ones that say at STU, like the students in this orientation tonight, your account will say at stu.k12.wv.us. So a person that is a facilitator has the at K12, and so does the teacher, has an at K12 email address. From time to time, there is a variation, like this is a Kanawha County teacher, and they've got a different type email address. But for the most part, you can always go by that, but you can look in this roll column to see exactly who's the facilitator and who's the teacher if your school hasn't told you. Because many of the schools, I think, are still hiring facilitators or locating those and assigning those job duties and personnel duties. Okay. I'm not hearing any more questions from my producers.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring this to a close. Yes, everything has been recorded. This will be placed on the West Virginia Department of Education's website in a day or two. Thank you all very much. Gloria, thank you very much for your time, and good night.
Good night.